really pray that Israelis will wake up the day after and say, you know what, it was a tough fight, but you know what, Netanyahu or Livni or Barak, you know, they represent hope. You know, I think that Olmert actually had a lot of guts and really tried to do the right thing in a lot of ways, but to be viewed as totally corrupt, it was, you know, it made it impossible for him to act. The same kind of things that made Clinton less than a great president, you know, in a different sphere, of course. But you know, you want people to feel like they have confidence in their leadership. So, look, I mean, you know, the politics of Israel is now radically changed from what it was. You know, I mean, you know, certainly Sharon changed everything, but he reflected a growth. So before you had Israeli politics, which were, on the one hand, people said, you can never trust the Arabs, and therefore we must hold on to the West Bank. On the other side, you had people who say, we have to trust the Arabs, and we have to give up the West Bank. Sharon came up and said, no, 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 no. You both have it right, and you both have it wrong. We can never trust the Arabs, but we must give up the West Bank. That's basically what Sharon said. He said, because Israel has to pick 2 out of 3 of the following: a larger Israel, a Jewish Israel, a democratic Israel. Pick 2 out of 3. You can't have all 3 of those things. If you're a bigger Israel and a Jewish Israel, you can't be a democratic Israel because the Arabs will outnumber us in a very short period of time. If you are a democratic Israel and a Jewish Israel, you have to be a smaller Israel, because sooner or later you're going to have to give these people a vote. I mean, you know, and it's funny that when I went to, during some terrible dark period in the Intifada and awful anti-Semitism on campus, I went to visit the former president of Harvard, who's now going to be our Larry Summers. And he said the following, which was really amazing, you know, at the time, because I went to see him to thank him because he had stood up for the Jewish students and said there was terrible Arab anti-Semitism and anti-Israel, and he took a lot of heat for it. In fact, I think that it wasn't the feminism thing that got him in the end. It was people laying in wait for him from that moment on that they wanted to bring him down. And they finally did, and who's going to have the last laugh is all of us, because thank God he's going to have a key role to play in the economy. But he said, Barry, I don't envy what you're going to be doing, because very soon the demand is going to shift from a 2-state solution to a 1-state solution. And they're just going to say, just give me the vote. You know, it's okay, have the West Bank, have everything you want. We're now so integrated we can't be separated. Just give me the vote. And that's going to be that's pretty hard to fight. That's real hard to fight. And therefore it became, he said, that makes separation all the more important, and that's what Sharon felt also. So he sort of redefined Israeli politics. So now, so what's going to be? I mean, you could have a coalition between Tzipi Livni and Ehud Barak. You could have a coalition between Tzipi Livni and Netanyahu. The polls seem to show that Tzipi Livni could pick up almost as many votes as Netanyahu. And then the key question, so Tzipi Livni could have created a new government with the ultra-Orthodox. And she said, no way. I mean, in the end, she said, of course, she was willing to give away up to so much, but then the subsidies for extra children, in the end, is a killer for the economy. I mean, Netanyahu actually made part of his reputation by denying the ultra-Orthodox that subsidy. And actually Sharon made part of his reputation by basically kicking him out of the office when they asked for too much. And so finally Tzipi Livni said, you're telling me we can't negotiate over Jerusalem. You're telling me that we've got to radically increase our subsidies for your yeshivas and for your families. And she said, we're not going to do it. So that's going to be part of her campaign, is that she's not going to do it. Now Netanyahu, when he was running the office of the finance ministry, he refused to do it because he said it's going to destroy the country. So now the question is he going to double back on that and try to make the coalition in order to have his government, right, which he may need to do, or is he gonna try to make a, you know, this could be the time when you could have electoral reform and you could cut those guys out altogether and save. As an Orthodox Jew, I think the first thing you do is eliminate one of the worst Chil Hashems in the history of the universe, desecration of God's name. Actually, you know, only religious people can desecrate God's name. It's a monopoly. You know what I mean? It's like when a person who appears to be religious does something awful. That's what you desecrate. You know, like Muslims or somebody who wants to, you know, destroy the Torah or burn the Torah. That's in Jewish life. That's not a desecration of God's name. Desecration of God's name is when we bring shame and disgrace on our own people. So, you know, I personally would be hoping that whoever gets it doesn't make a coalition and says, it's the end of this thing. We have to create a unique Jewish identity in Israel. It's not going to be Reform. It's not going to be Orthodox. It's going to be respectful of pluralism. It's going to allow us to, I mean, look, I said before, assimilation was the norm for American Jews before 1967. And after 1967, you see this flowering of spiritual life among American Jews. Why? Because we can choose. You know, you look at it, you say, that's beautiful, I want to do that, or that's beautiful, I want to do that. If you're living in a country where people are telling you what you have to do and what you can't do, and they're telling people that they're not really Jewish, or that their children aren't really Jewish, or that the Russian Jews aren't really Jewish, and they make it, and then they demand money for it, it doesn't exactly redound well to the pendulum that shifts between assimilation and love of Judaism. In Israel, the pendulum doesn't swing quite so easily because you have the religious coercion that's having an impact on.
It's so much force
on the country, and so I actually think that it's a question of Israel's survival. Actually, to allow Israel to develop its own spiritual identity that's truly Jewish, deeply engaged with the Jewish people of the world, and yet capable of being developed in an environment of freedom. All of this, I mean, this goes way beyond simply allowing rights for Reform Jews in Israel. That's important, but that's not the name. This is in some ways a survival issue for Israel. So, and certainly if you begin to use the treasury as a way of, again, spending vast amounts of money, so, you know, who benefits from the subsidies for larger families? Ultra-Orthodox families and Arab families. We should be investing money in the well-being of the Arab population, not encouraging them to have more children, and certainly not encouraging the ultra-Orthodox to have more children, who are not going to serve in the army and who are not going to pay taxes, and sooner or later the average Israeli is going to get sick. He's going to say, what am I doing in the army? You know, there's one thing that Israelis hate more than anything else, and that's being what they call a friar, which is a fool. And a fool is what you are if you're doing all the work and somebody else is getting the benefit. So ultimately, this actually threatens Israel's security, I think, as well. These are all critical issues that Israel will have to confront. And what's going to be required is leadership, just plain leadership. And, you know, you pray that Tzipi Livni, on the day after she gets elected, or Netanyahu, or Ehud Barak, will be able to get up and say, you know, this is where we, you know, need to go.
I certainly hope so, because just as we need. I want to switch theaters to